Hey guys, what's going on? It's the 157 Gamer here, and this is kind of a different video. I would say it's kind of similar to the Beyond Light podcast that I done last week with Truttheller. Just much appreciation for him being able to bounce back and forward with the ideas on what it's all about. But this video is slightly different. We're currently going to be talking about the state of stasis within Crucible and within Destiny 2 as a whole. So, I've recently been sitting there seeing a lot of mixed feelings about stasis, which is understandable. The game's meant to be fast-paced, it's meant to be action-packed, and it's all this, yet stasis is there, slowing everyone down. Pardon the pun, if you want to say. But, is stasis actually that bad in Crucible? Personally, before I actually get any further into this is all personal opinion and how I see it when I'm sitting there playing the game. So, at the moment, I am currently Mythic 2 in the Glory playlist. I have been bouncing between Mythic 3 and Mythic 1 for quite a while since the start of the season. I actually got to Mythic 3 quite quickly. I got it within the first week, oddly enough. But I kept on bouncing between it. And here's the thing. Playing it in compet, yes, you know people have stasis. Yes, you know it's frustrating. Take it from me. I play an Arc Titan with Skull Fort and Shoulder Charge. So, I'm playing a very aggressive class when it needs to be. With a very passive loadout now. Which is the hand cannon and either No Time to Explain or the Imperative Scout Rifle. But any of my complaints I've had in the Crucible or in Compet have been more about the hit registration, the current two bugs that are very heavy in Compet at the moment that haven't been fixed yet, sadly, and just the play style that gets rewarded. So, do I think stasis is bad for the Crucible? No, I don't. As much as people sit there and want to sit there and hate on stasis because it's killing what they find is the meta, stasis is there to sit there and change up the meta. It was there to sit there and change up the scene in Crucible and in PvP. In Crucible, it was there mainly to sit there and more slow down players' interaction and try and force them to be more tactical. Because in recent games, when I've been playing with stacked players, we're sitting there communicating. Once we sit there and notice that the enemy team have a silence and squall already, we sit there and inform each other. Sit there and start staying spaced out. Don't huddle together. Don't stay close to one another. Spaced out but still able to cover each other. In different areas, meaning silence squall can get popped. Enemy can freeze one of our teammates. We can take out the person who cast silence squall, and it's an easy trade or an easy one-up because we can then take out the team behind them. But if we're all stacked together, they get a free 3k. And that's my thing. People who are complaining about stasis, personally, I feel that they don't want to move on from the old meta, which was W key with a shotgun, sit there and you dodge roll and all that. Because that meta's basically gone. Because the only two ways that you can now win in a stasis-filled Crucible is keeping your distance, keeping space from stasis users, or, by the way, those first two are in the same one, or being the heavy aggressor with tactics. So, for example, you're sitting there running with a shotgun, okay, you sit there and know that someone's there. You intentionally try and bait out them to waste their melee, their grenade, their ability, and then you hard W into them when they can't do anything to stop it. But people are still hating on stasis. They're sitting there saying, oh, it's not great for the Crucible, it's what's killed it for me. And personally, obviously this is going to be very controversial because it is a controversial topic. Some people love it, some people hate it. I myself am kind of in the middle. I don't love stasis, because if I love stasis, I'll be using it as my main class, but it has helped me sit there and know that I need to start going through my other subclasses. I've been going through my Arc, my Solar, and my Void classes. I've also been using stasis from time to time in compet, but I keep coming back to my Arc class because I don't use supers too often in compet, unless I can sit there and guarantee a kill or two, or shut down a super. My main weapons is, well, my weapons, my grenades, and my melee ability. I will use that to finish people that are running. I'll use that to sit there and be an entry frag on enemies that are not realizing I'm there, and all that. But why is it that people are not liking stasis? I've already sat there and mentioned the stuff about it making the meta field change. Other people are hating it because it basically does the one thing that everyone hates in the game: slows you down. Everyone hated the smoke grenades because it done that, but it never froze, so it was passable. But the fact that you can and will get frozen by these grenades, these abilities, these supers, is what is making everybody hate it, or majority of the community hate it. And I can see where they're coming from. Anytime I get frozen by an ult, I do have my little rant or my little frustration going, for fuck's sake, this is so BS and all that. But then I sit there and come back to myself and think, it's like, Dance and Squall. If you get frozen by that, it's because it's their last ditch effort. If you're sitting there spaced out away from your team, you're fine. Fine, they took you out, but you have a chance to sit there and take them out before they freeze you. And half the time I get them absolute and then my teammates finish them off. The Warlock's one, which is Wraith or whatever you want to call it, Wrath. Yes, everyone is hating on that one the most, and I can understand it. It's a ranged melee that has a pulse that sits there and kills. Personally, I found it annoying when I first went against it, but again, it's a super that if you basically are able to dodge the balls, you can take them out quite quickly. Because they can only throw so many of those while you're sitting there spraying at them. You can kite them to sit there and waste their super because it doesn't last too long. And then comes the Titans. They have a melee ability, but again, they have to sit there and charge at you. If they don't know how to effectively use the melee ability to gain terrain or gain distance, use your Duskfield grenade, use your snapshot grenade, use your glacial walls. Any of your abilities can slow it down and help you in the end, because you can destroy that glacial wall and end up either killing the Titan or it's critically injuring him, making it that you can just do 1-2 pop from your elemental weapon and he's gone. But at the moment, stasis is seen as a feared subclass, a feared super. Anytime you hear it pop, you're running. Anytime you see it pop, you're running. No one wants to contest it. And anytime someone does contest it, they have big, massive goddamn cojones, or they're just know that they can't get away and are committed to try and do as much damage as possible. But should we really be blaming stasis for the state of the Crucible? Personally, no. The Crucible is at the state that it is because the players refuse to change. The players refuse to sit there and adapt to new metas, and it's quite evident when you see people still running around with the old weapons. You see people sitting there running around with Mountaintop, not as much anymore, as that's kind of been replaced by Truthteller. Personally a bit stronger, and I was like, what the hell? But anyway. But it is still dominated by all these meta weapons from the past that have been locked off. I still sit there and use Trust in compet from time to time. I've been swanging it off to Nature of the Beast and it's been doing well. Nature of the Beast has helped me get a lot of kills as well. But I'm still constantly going back to my Trust because I personally find it a god roll, well, god roll in my eyes. Is it a god roll? Probably not. But I digress. Stasis is not the problem. It is the community's mentality towards it. And a lot of people are going to be very disagreeing with that because it's like, oh, so you're fine with them getting frozen 5 to 6 times in a match? It's like, well, yeah, because if I've gotten frozen, I've done something stupid and have been caught out off guard. Do stasis abilities and supers need tweak? Oh yes. Not majorly, but ever so slightly to sit there and bring a balance and reduce the fact that if you panic throw something or panic do something with stasis, you aren't rewarded for it. You're rewarded for the ones that sit there and actually use the abilities and time them. If you sit there and know someone's going to push, and you throw a glacial wall and they get frozen in it, your reward. You shouldn't get punished for timing a glacial wall on them. If you know someone's in there low and they're hiding around the corner and you throw a dust field to pull them out, your reward. What I don't agree with is being able to sit there and jumping around, getting your ass kicked, and then all of a sudden you panic, throw a glacial grenade, and sit there and detonate it in any means way. For hunters, that is shadow dive. For titans, that is slide. I personally don't agree with that because those would feel, if you haven't planned them, panic. And you technically shouldn't get rewarded for panicked moves. Because that's like me sitting there turning around and being a Arc Titan and running around and being like, oh no, they're still there, I'm going to shoulder charge them. And getting rewarded it when I sat there and noticed them last second. I shouldn't. Personally, I shouldn't. Do I get rewarded sometimes? Yes. Other times I tactically actually angle my supercharge to intentionally miss so I can get into cover and then turn around and start firing on them. But I digress. Stasis abilities and stasis supers need tweaked, but they aren't the cause to why Crucible is feeling bad. The issue with Crucible at the moment is the player's mentality and the lack of reward you get for doing Crucible. What do you get from Nightfalls? You get armor upgrades, you get armor enhancements, you have a chance of exotics, and then you also have the, when they do start coming back again, the strike-specific exotics, no not exotics, sorry, drops, which can only drop from those strikes, either if you're doing them harder or in a Nightfall. But, what do you have for Crucible? A leveling system. Rewards that don't drop higher than your light level. Some armor upgrades. And a chance from exotic from time to time. But none of those are going to drive players to do Crucible. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a video that is linked in the description that is from Ascendant. He sat there and done a great video sitting there explaining what the Crucible should be turned into and how to improve it. And I greatly agree with it. Because at the moment, the only reason I even do Crucible myself is because I'm going for Unbroken. I'm going for a Triumph. If I didn't have Unbroken there, I wouldn't bother with Crucible past the Pinnacle. And that would be legit. So, what needs to be done is to get the Crucible into a better working state. The assist subclasses, yeah, they do need tweaked. And I've thought of tweaks already. You'll see sitting there popping up on the screen now the tweaks that I sit there and would suggest between Hunter, Warlock, and Titan. All these tweaks include their abilities, their aspects, and their supers, because all of that just need ever so slightly changed to level the playing field. As you can see, looking at the Hunter column, you'll sit there and see for the super, I've sat there and said that it shouldn't be an instant freeze with anyone in the radius of it, but it should be an AoE. Because the inner radius is instant freeze and then it has a slight AoE. That's fine. But it needs to be changed to a shockwave because at the moment, its radius ignores walls, doors, levels, and all that. Personally, I don't think they need to go to the extent to change it that it sits there and shockwaves upstairs to get the second levels. That's fine if it just shockwave through a doorway or window on that level. But have it sit there and show that it sits there and it is curving through, coming through the wall, the window, and then curving around the wall that sits there and was getting blocked. Because when you're in a different room and you hear a sound squall proc and you're like, oh, that's somewhat near me, but I should be safe, and then the shockwave comes through the wall and freezes you, it is the biggest downer that you can sit there and feel, because you're like, oh, I'm safe, I can sit there and push out and kill whoever caused that in a second here. And then you're froze. You then have to break out, and then you're critical because of the breakout, or you're lower on health because of it. And then that whole plan goes to crap. While if they sat there and had it that it sat there and shockwave through doorways to the rooms that it would hit the radius, then you wouldn't have that issue. Because players would be able to sit there and see the shockwave. It's going to be a quick shockwave, bear in mind, not a slow one, so it's only people who sit there and are actively realizing that they need to get out of the way that will sit there and get rewarded for their common sense. But it gives them a chance of sitting there being able to counter it after it's been proc. Along with the Shatter Dive, I've sat there and mentioned it requires to have a cooldown, because you seem to be able to just constantly spam down that regardless of cooldown or what ability you have charged. So I'm assuming it's similar to the way Titan Skate is, where you get a boost in your slide, but ours get a cooldown after 2 use. While I'm not sure, I could be wrong, someone correct me in the comments if I am wrong, but the hunters, from what I've seen from my mate, he sat there and was showing me it, and he was just doing maybe 4 or 5 in a row. Like, I wouldn't say it was like short pauses, but literally it was just done, 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 consecutive. It was just jumping up, smashing down, jumping up, smashing down. So, change that to that they can do 2, and then they have a 5 to 10 second cooldown. Change it that when they do that on enemy crystals, yes, it clears them, but they get reduced damage. I'm not sure if they get nullified damage, but they should get reduced damage for doing so, because they're intentionally clearing it and they have to get close to it. Should that be able to cause enemy crystals to damage the enemies? Yes. Should it be able to kill them? Fuck no, unless they're really low. It does reduce damage to you, and it does little damage to the enemies, as it was their size crystals. I don't agree with it being able to get used against them. For the Warlock, I sat there and mentioned that their melee needs to be slightly changed to be able to destroy crystals at range. The Titans have their slide to be able to destroy crystals that they go past. The Warlocks have their Shatter Dive. What do Hunters have? Their weapons. They need to get an ability that can do the same. And why not sit there and give their melee ability to have it? If they sit there and throw their melee ability and it contacts with, say, a crystal, it will cause a chain reaction destruction. Meaning any crystal that is touching or close by, and when I mean close by, I mean there's literally not a gap for a player to run through it, will sit there and chain react with it. On top of that, their melee should be able to freeze, but depending on the range of the enemy when it is thrown, it will have a shorter freeze timer. Meaning if someone sat there and got hit by it at its tail end of the ability, they're frozen for maybe 0.5 seconds, 0.1, or 0.5 seconds or 1 second. Enough to cancel their momentum. Which is good, because that can mean that if it's panic thrown, it will cancel out a Titan's ability if they're rushing the shoulder charge and rushing the melee them, but it won't put that player who had the upper hand in a disadvantage other than their momentum has now been killed. They have to resort to weapons or fleeing or using grenades and all that. While if you're hit by it within the closest range of it, you're frozen for maybe 2-3 seconds, punishing whoever sat there and tried to push up on you and rewarding you for being able to hit them directly with it. Because you then have an easy kill on them and they got punished for trying to charge you. Simple. The super should be changed to what I would describe similar. The range of the balls either to be reduced or replaced with the same effect as their melee, meaning if they're caught on the tail end of the range, they have a shorter freeze timer. So if the Warlock is fast enough, they're rewarded. If they're slow enough, they're punished because they don't get the kill and have to use more thing. This is going to sound like a very negative thing to do, but increase how much supercharge they have, if this is going to be the case. Because no one wants to use the super, but if they're going to be sitting there hitting people at tail's end and them having maybe a 1 second freeze, they need to be able to sit there and get out of it, or be able to throw another one if they get to them in time but haven't been able to pop the shatter effect. The shatter effect, however, needs to be changed to either do little damage when popped, so back to where it was originally, or apply a slow effect. These effects do not stack, meaning him popping it consecutively does not stack and cause them to freeze. It will just keep the player slowed down, causing their momentum to get shunt for maybe 1 to 2 seconds. Enough to sit there and close the range, and enough to get a kill if you're good enough. But it removes the broken factor of being able to get hit by it and frozen for a long period of time, which no one likes. No one wants to be frozen for very long, which is why it needs to be done where if you're frozen, you've been punished for being too close to an enemy. Duskfield grenades. Personally, I feel they're fine, maybe weaken the effect of the pull to people that are further out from it. Maybe have it that just cancels their momentum if they're running away from it and they get hit and they're just within the light radius, it just causes them to go into a walk, not get pulled back. And for the people that get pulled into the center, well yeah, they should get punished by getting frozen. Simple. For the ones that just get in, get pulled into the very edge and walk out, the slow effect either needs to be reduced so it isn't as long, or it needs to sit there and have a way to nullify it. Meaning, if a hunter sits there and uses its dodge, it will sit there and cause it to no longer have the freeze effect. If a warlock pops their rift, regardless of it being a healing or a enhancement rift, I can't remember the name of it, my bad, it should sit there and cancel it out. Titans that sit there and pop their barricades should sit there and either reduce the time on it or remove it as well. But that's my changes for both Hunter and Warlock. Oh, do Titans not get changed? No, they do. I mean Titan and I know how broken that stasis can be at times. They need to increase the amount of charge used per shatter. So when you do the heavy shatter wave, you need to increase the amount of charge it uses. They need to apply the fact that the higher up you are when you proc it, the further its range will go. So it rewards you for being in the risk of up in the air with no cover by having a larger range if you're able to flare. Next, the punch or melee of the super needs to be changed that when you're using it, it increases the amount it uses depending on how long you're in it. So for people using it as a movement technique, and personally I know it as well, if you jump in the air and use it, you can go hella far with it. So all they need to do is, if you're going to go hella far with it, you get a higher usage of it. If you're going to do a short range puck, give it the minimum usage of it. If you do mid range, bit more usage. If you're doing the longest one, which is when you're in the air and you proc it and hold it in until it actually procs, use a large amount. Because that ability is one hit kill on enemies. On supers, no. On enemies that are just running about. This means that the Titans will have to sit there and use their ability more wisely, causing it to be less of a I'm just going to spam ice everywhere and hope it works and then punching you to death. It ends up being, I need to sit there and ensure this ice crystals will sit there and kill or freeze anyone in this vicinity. On top of that, if you're within a close radius of when a Titan sister and causes the shatter wave, I'm just going to call it, for their smash, if you're behind them but you're too close, you should get partially frozen, not as long as if you got caught in the crystal, but slightly for being too close to when that does, because personally I feel like that should have a slight shockwave around you. Doesn't damage you, just freezes you. For maybe a second, maybe not 0.5. Just enough to cancel whatever you're trying to fucking do around. So, those are the changes that I would suggest to these classes. Those are the changes that I would suggest to these classes for PvE. Should they be applied to the PvE scene? Depending if it finds to be even more broken in PvE, even more broken than it is now in PvE, yes. But at the current time being, no. I don't see why the PvE community should get punished for the hate towards stasis that the Crucible community is causing. Anyway, that has been my video on the Sea of the Crucible, the Sea of the Stasis, and my personal opinions on what can be done to make it better. Once again, I highly suggest you guys click on the video link in the description to go to Ascendant's video explaining how to improve the Crucible and make it more rewarding for players to do it. And if you have any disagreements or feedback or alterations that you would sit there and like to suggest for these changes that I have suggested, feel free to put them into the comment section below. I would like to sit there and hear your opinions, and I'd like to sit there and see what other people's thoughts are. On top of that, I am not an official developer. I am not an official game designer. I can sit there and say these, but I don't know how hard it is to sit there and do, or how hard it is to this extent. I know myself from the little work I've done in game engines like Unity and Unreal 4, it isn't easy doing a shockwave effect. So if they were able to pull it off, that would be great, but understandable. I wouldn't complain if it sat there and just was an AoE. It just ended up being a slower shatter and a slower spread on this radius, still going through walls, but still have a chance to cause enemies to flee slightly. Anyway, I've been the 157 Gamer. This has been kind of a rant on Destiny 2 Stasis and Crucible. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you in the next one. Bye!